to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And last week we talked a little bit about leadership. And in hindsight, we were having a conversation and we sort of think we left a piece out, right? I mean, we talked a little bit about everyone has the opportunity to lead, but we never really talked about like people who are considered leaders or followed at the very least because they are the best at what they do, right? I mean, that's sort of where our conversation started to go.
Yeah, I think we were talking a lot about the people leadership, which is a very important part, but I think there's this other part that has as much value, but I think we needed to just delve into it a little bit more because of the fact that, someone being the best at something and people wanting to follow that or learn from that, I think it's a very important piece in our business, especially because a lot of information in the construction industry is tribal. And so, seeing someone do something or learning a new trait, a new way of doing something from someone else is one of the best ways, we tell people to get on the job and work hard and watch the people around them. And so that is a very important part of our business to, people not just leading people, but leading by example.
Yeah, it's one of the things we've sort of seen as we've grown is we brought in, experience. At first we started with, farmer mentality type. It was a bunch of people that were local and Ford knew and they had the ability to do things, but how well did we know what we were doing from an experience model? So we brought in some other people who were pretty experienced, and all of a sudden we saw, quite the opposite of what you hear. And Ford brought up the tribal nature of construction, that these guys were actually really willing to just talk through it with younger kids and say, like, here's how I do it, why I do it. Now, there's been a lot of like back and forth banter and jokes about it because, the old guys say the young kids are cowboys, and most of them don't even say they weren't cowboys, but they're willing to talk to them about it. The bigger piece has actually been the kids being willing to learn, to sit there and learn and also realize that it works. But
yeah, I think jumping onto that is to the fact that we have one of the best dozer operators that I've ever seen in all my years in this business that works with us, and we're proud to have him as part of our team. And he doesn't want to be in management of any way, but it's amazing the amount of guys that watch him, that are on the job sites with him, and watch how he works and watch what he does. And he might talk to him or he might not about that, but it's just the fact that they can learn by seeing him do certain things, and it makes them a better team member because they see his leadership. He cleans his windows, he's there on time, even those things, the small things, the intangibles, as well as the way he runs his machine. And his machine is probably have one of the highest hours machines in our fleet, but it's his machine, and he takes such good care of it that even though it has high hours, it's probably in as good a shape as any of our equipment.
Yeah, we're talking a little bit about Greg, right? So how long has Greg been an operator?
40 years,
30 plus, I'm guessing.
Yeah, right. I mean, like longer than some of our folks have been alive. All right, that's safe to say.
Yeah, that's
longer than
true.
we've been in business.
Yeah, certainly longer than we've been in business. Yeah, and what do you think the likelihood of us getting Greg on the podcast is?
I don't know. I
Is
think
there
we
less
might
than
actually.
zero?
Can we go negative numbers?
See, I don't know that that's true. I mean, obviously it's not Greg's thing, but Greg has been really willing to work with the guys and talk to them. And the funny thing is about Greg, and really we've seen it with a number of operators that have come in and really good, is almost like that Army mentality. There's, and I'll be Ford now. I'll mess up the saying, but there's a saying about smooth is slow and slow is fast. Or I might have that out of order.
Yeah, no, you got it. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Right, and that's Greg. And that's a lot of our guys. I mean, some of our best operators, you look at them and think they're going slow until you notice that everyone else is well behind them at the end of the day. And that's when you talk about leadership, I think, at least with my personality, it is hard to go slow sometimes when you know someone's pulling ahead of you, and keep your eye on the bigger picture and say, I'm doing the right thing and I'm doing it the right way, and it's going to work out in the end. And Greg has that mentality. And we have a number of guys that are that way, that are really willing to just work with, do the work. But aside from doing the work, also willing to sit there and either talk to the guys or even just be the role model, because that is part of it here. Whether any of these guys whether they talk to them, sort of Ford hinted at it, they don't have to. They keep doing what they do, and everybody around them is better because of it, but they also can see what they're doing. And if you have the courage to go up and ask them about it, they'll certainly explain it to you. Greg's not tribal about it. Paulie's another good example, and Paulie's a good operator, but the thing you notice most about Paul is how meticulous he is with his machine. And Ford sort of brought that up. Like, he always cleans it, everything's greased. He does everything right before he ever turns the key on in that machine. And that goes a long way, because if that's where you are before you start it and after you shut it down, then how are you going to not operate to the best of your ability? You're already making all that effort.
Yeah. And this sort of leading by example is definitely a different kind of leadership, because I would bet that if you ask Greg or Paul or any one of these guys we're talking about, Gary Rambo is another great example. I would venture, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great example.
I bet any one of them would not say or suggest or even probably begin to think that they are a leader, right? They wouldn't say, "Oh, I'm a leader." But they likely don't even realize is that just simply by doing what they do, being meticulous, being disciplined, they've actually set an example of, or that's difficult to achieve for a lot of our folks. And I actually think that, like, the weird stigma isn't that these guys aren't willing to share. I think people sometimes are too embarrassed to ask, right? Is that a fair assessment? Like, I think young guys want to be good, right?
Yeah.
They want to do a great job.
Even older guys, right? It's true. It is not in human nature to just put yourself out there. It's in many of the discussions we had with people trying to build training programs. That's always where we get to, is just, it's hard to, and I'll make it me. The other day I went to do something. I was at Longwood. I went to jump in a machine. I wanted to park my truck somewhere when I got on site, and there was a lull in the way. So I jumped out and was going to move the lull, and I got in, and it's going to take me 10 seconds to figure out, okay, where's the kill switches? Are the kill switches on? Is the emergency brake on? And Chris Goble walks up and he's like, hey, the switches are here, here, here. Now, Chris wasn't there when I walked up, but had he been there, I don't think I would have asked Chris and said, hey, where are all the kill switches on this? I want to move it. Because if I'm going to do that, I might as well just say, Chris, can you move the machine? Because I can't. Right? Which, so you don't want to put yourself out there. So I can make it very personal with me that it just happened a week ago, And so if you're not willing to do that, then how are you willing to say, like, hey, how should I grade this?
Yeah.
So that I carry the dirt properly? Or how, where should I bench myself in this track hoe? Or how far back? It's not in our nature to ask those kind of questions. We just sort of want to say, oh yeah, I didn't have to do that. And then you end up putting yourself sometimes in a bad spot. Sometimes you slow yourself down. Sometimes it doesn't get done right. But we want to believe that we can do it. And it's really one of the big slowdowns in our industry is being confident enough and open enough as a company to say, hey, we clearly have people that know how to do these things. Let's go ahead and ask them.
Yeah. It kind of actually reminds me, I have two thoughts there. Something you said. It reminds me a little bit of a young person learning how to drive a vehicle. Your confidence level goes up a lot faster than your skill level does, right? Once you know how to operate the equipment, you start to get pretty confident in moving the thing around. But it doesn't mean you're good at it. And it doesn't mean you know what to watch out for either. And the other thing you said there, it's actually, there are training's a really important part of education and learning, but it doesn't necessarily shorten the experience curve. Like, training can get you so far, because if like you said, how to get in the machine, where the switches are, how to turn the thing on, how to make it move. Maybe you've even seen some tutorials on how to adjust your blade appropriately for grading, etc. It doesn't necessarily mean you've got the experience to overcome the situations you're about to encounter.
Yeah, and Ford will probably remember this. We're going way back and into Secra. I think the first time we were at Secra on the cell, and we were running everybody we had, and really feeling the pressure, trying to get the work done. And I got there and I was like, guys, do you need me to do anything? And I was hoping the answer was, yes, but can you get in a rock truck? Because we talked about rock truck, most dangerous piece out there, probably biggest, heaviest, but you put the guy in there or track up, which I feel comfortable in. And they said, well, just can you run the 6? I was like, all right, so 6 should be, at that time for us, should have been bulk pushing. And then I realized the 6 was onliner and building the road, and I was getting fed by trucks. And I think we had radios at that point, and Greg said to me, or maybe he said it to me if we didn't have radios, and Greg said to me, you just don't back drag, you can't grade backwards. And he gave me a few pointers of what I was gonna have to do. And he's like, you all right? I was like, yeah, I'll be okay. And later I found out Greg was sitting at the top of the hill as he was working, just watching me and laughing, because I was just struggling to do. I knew how to move the machine forward and back. I knew how to control the blade. I knew what I wanted to do, and Greg had told me how to do it, and I still couldn't do it. And that's been true a few times with those dozers, and I'm really open about it. I'm comfortable with the fact that we don't need me to be able to run a dozer.
Right.
And I can move the dozer, I can push off with the dozer, but if you actually try and have the grade hold something flat, it usually goes badly by the end. It starts to, wobble and it's not flat, and then I want to fix it, and then I can't fix it. But it's one of those things, to your point. I knew how to move the machine. I knew how to get in and run it. I knew what I wanted to do, and I had somebody tell me what to do. And it still did not make me able to do even what some of our younger operators who are capable are able to do, with less experience, or more experience, but less time.
Right. Yep, for sure.
Well, jumping back to something Brian was saying there about the experience curve, what's we've talked about before, the 9,000 hours to become an expert at something. We said that Greg and Ed and Paulie, they've spent 20,000 hours probably in their machines being a master at their craft. There is no shortcut for that. You can put on a headset, you can put on a YouTube video, you can do whatever you want. It's not going to be the shortcut of actually your butt in the seat doing the job.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and training has its place, right? For sure. I mean, we need guys to know the safety protocols. We need for guys to know how to use the machines appropriately, how to grease the machines, how to maintain them. But it does not shorten that experience curve.
No, and we can take it sort of a different angle. And still guys who might be perceived as leaders or are leaders, but that's not the reason I'm latching onto it. Is you brought up Gary, Scott Gross is another one, Jack Shearer is another one. Guys who actually have not run machines a lot lately. And then all of a sudden they get on the job and they got to run a machine, and they can run just about any machine really effectively because they still have those hours, they didn't forget. They're comfortable in anything. The other day I saw Scott, he was in Morgantown, and he's in a backhoe, and backhoes always make me laugh because it's the easiest. It's the first machine you buy, it's first machine forward block because it can do a bunch of things, but it does one thing if you're facing forward, and then you turn around, it's a completely different set of controls, and you're doing another thing, let alone when you go back to the older ones with the force sticks and everything else. And these guys know how to run all these machines. So you think about it, they know the basic things, how to care for them and how to start them. They know how to run them. They know how to move. You know what I mean? There's a lot there that they've picked up over time. And it is really important that we get that information from, an older generation that has had all this experience to try to help the younger guys to move them along a little bit further. It's the JDs of the world, Joe Stoffers. Those guys they're few and far between when you have that, the 40-something guys at this point because of 2008. We've talked about that, I think, on the podcast, but definitely between us as a group, that hurt the industry and put a little bit of a hole. It made it a bigger gap for who was teaching who, and it really exposed, the tribal nature of this industry that existed for a long time, which just stand there and you'll figure it out. You'll learn by watching me, and then someday you'll know. We're not going to talk about it.
Yeah. So,
well, and JD's a good example. Before he came to work with us, he worked at another company, and he was even amongst friends, he was the skid loader guy. He literally had a truck and a trailer and a skid loader for that company, and that's all he did was run skid loader. I mean, he did other things a little bit here and there, but his truck and trailer was literally set up to haul the skid loader around. That man has more hours in the seat of that machine. Now he can do other things too, but then you see him run a skid loader and he just excels at it. But it's the comfort of doing it. I mean, I think part of this too with our industry is that, I don't know, holding a shovel, but all of a sudden you're getting into a big piece of equipment, bigger than the car you drive, bigger than the pickup truck you drive. And there's a little bit of just a discomfort there because it doesn't operate with a steering wheel. Most of them, it doesn't operate in the same ways. And so, even, I remember a little bit ago, Dan was telling stories. I remember the other year, I've had more seat time in a rock truck than I would like to count, but I jumped on and they're like, oh yeah, we got to run back that, trail and do this and this. And it still took me 20, 30 minutes, like the first 4 or 5 loops to get comfortable again, even because I hadn't been in it for a year or two. And it was just it's just that comfort level of getting back into it and the time it takes. And you learn little tricks too. If you spend more time with a piece of equipment, you learn it might be able to do something you didn't even know it could do, or it might be able to do something outside of what it normally does because you just have comfort of how the tracks run, how the wheels go, how it turns. You kind of feel like, okay, I can turn this corner and it'll work or it won't work. Like it literally is time. And that's something that I think is a huge challenge because, people listen to these podcasts at 1.5 speed. Like everything in our world is sped up. Like it's just everything we do is faster, faster, faster. And unfortunately, some things in this world you just can't speed up.
Yeah, and that's become especially true as the workforce changes, right? There's definitely been a shift in the workforce where we're starting to see some of the 30, 40-year guys age out of it, right? They're getting to a point where they're at a spot where they're comfortable, hopefully, ready to retire, hopefully. And the gap in the middle, I think like some of it, like you said, some of the shift away from construction and a big push in the education system to say you have to go to college and things of that nature have put us in a spot where young guys now need the experienced folks so that they can hopefully find those shortcuts faster. They can find the way to accelerate the curve if at all possible. I think one of the things no, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was sorry, but I was just going to say, like, one of the things that I think really, like, this, as you boil it back down to, like, the Cro-Magnon factor, like, I don't need to ask for help or some of those factors, but, like, those older guys, they might give you a little bit of crap, we'll call it, or, bust your chops a little bit, but, like, they, there's fewer of them out there, and, taking the time to learn from them and accepting their information and stuff is so valuable to everybody. Even us that have been in the business for a little while, like there's still things you're learning daily. That's the cool part about our business is no 2 days are usually alike. Doesn't matter. No 2 weeks, no 2 jobs. There's always something new, a new angle, a new something to learn. And so, it is educational, even though if it's not book learned.
One of the cool things for me is when I get the chance to get into any type of machinery, and usually it's something little, right? I get to get into the telehandler or a skid loader or maybe a wheel loader, something of that nature, because I don't get to do it very often, and it's not my background. I'm not from construction, so it's always fun, right? I think there's that little kid nostalgia playing with Tonka trucks and equipment that makes every human being want to get into a big piece of equipment and drive it around and dig up the dirt, right? But the cool thing for me is that there's zero expectation of me knowing what I'm doing. So when I go to do something, the expectation is that I have no clue what I'm going to do, and I'm going to need some assistance. I'm going to need to be told. I'm going to need some directions. And I think the one thing that we might be able to do for some of our younger, less experienced folks is to try and create that environment. To try and create that environment where there's less expectation of them being experts and more expectation of some of our experienced folks that they're going to need to or want to, for their benefit and a younger guy's benefit, impart that knowledge, share that knowledge, be willing to jump in and give suggestions. Young guys got to be open to it. A lot of young guys, they want to go full speed. We've had guys like that in the past. They had the crutch of GPS, right? So we've been fortunate enough to have a relatively updated fleet, have a lot of GPS pieces, and GPS can get you so far, from what I've been told, right? GPS is a significant aid, a crutch, especially for a less experienced person. But an experienced person is going to know when the GPS is maybe doing something it shouldn't be. They're going to know what to do when it's not working properly, or when it's not working at all, or when you get in a machine that doesn't have it.
Yeah, I sort of be all over the place here because you brought up a lot of good points. As I was running around the other day with a few of our sites, and it struck me the like almost like the age breakout, if you could put it on a chart, and the roles. You know what I mean? I saw some of our youngest guys, like AJ, he just had a shovel in his hand and was just working. You know, but I saw guys not much older than AJ who were either running equipment or in charge of a job. You know what I mean? And then you had guys that were all the way at the other end of the spectrum, like an Ed or a Greg, you know what I mean, who have been doing this forever, but they want to be in the machine. You know what I mean? And so it was neat to get out and see that. And then the other point that came to me as you were saying it was the GPS when we were in Georgia, and Aaron went down with me, and so the guys convinced Aaron to get in the machine. And I think I told the story. You know, she thought fully autonomous meant like the Tesla cars that would drive itself. You have to move it a little bit. I mean, you do have to move it, but I mean, she was able to grade flat because that's what the GPS does. Now, she was in an open field. You put her in any number of scenarios where that GPS doesn't work perfect, and the machine would have got to stop. You know what I mean? She would have probably not even tried. You know, so that's one of the plus and the minus of the GPS is it makes you capable of doing more than you could probably do, which could put you in a bad situation because you don't know, but it also makes you more confident, and people around you might perceive that you actually know how to do it, but it's really because the computer knows how to do it. And that really plays to your point about the cars. You know what I mean? Cars, if you think about it, when some of us that are old now learn to drive, you know what I mean? You know, my girls are Mara's 5-6 years away from getting her license. Like, if I put her in my Mustang, she's not going very far. I mean, I'm not going to do it, but she's not going very. She wouldn't get it out of the driveway. She'd stall it. It wouldn't start. She wouldn't know to push the clutch. You know what I mean? There'd be all sorts of little things. But if you put her in one of the new cars, I mean, they do almost drive themselves. If she could get to the highway, she could just set it on cruise control, and the truck would virtually drive itself. You know what I mean? Especially, and that's even without the reals, you know, the super drive systems. So that's great, except it doesn't breed an understanding of what we do. And that's really where these guys that we're talking about are so exceptionally valuable, is that you have, and we named 3 or 4 guys, we probably have 8, 9 guys who are this way, will just go out and they know how to do it, maybe more than that. I may be doing a disservice to our team. You know what I mean? Honestly, there's probably even more than that. But in my head, I'm thinking of a few guys who have done it for 5 to 10 years, where they've just, for us, you know, they've been here a long time. That's the guys that are in my head when this conversation sort of come up. But as I talk out loud, I realize there's actually a lot more guys than that. And I just want everybody to know how much we appreciate it and how valuable it is, because being a leader does not mean you have a white hard hat. Being a leader means that you go out there and you're at the forefront of what we do and you lead. You are the lead dozer guy, lead, you know, the excavator operator on a pipe crew he's not the leader of the crew usually. You have a pipe foreman. But if that guy is not effective and not doesn't understand what he's doing and doesn't do the right thing, really bad things could happen. You know, and so having a white hat doesn't make you a leader. Being genuine and experienced and doing what you do every single day, that makes you a leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's probably,
you know, back to the first part of what we did the last podcast about leadership. I think like there's very few people that can do both, but you can choose your track if you feel more comfortable doing one or the other. I think that's part of what this whole second piece of this leadership conversation is about, is that like you don't have to be one or the other, but usually everybody has tendencies of leading one way or the other. And so again, everybody can be a leader, but it might not be in, I'm going to run a crew of 20 guys. It might be in, I'm going to be an expert in running this machine, and other people are going to ask me about it when they're trying to learn how to do this. And so there's just an array of different leadership ways of everybody being able to help someone around them.
Yeah, I think it's a point we did make in the last podcast, but I think it just goes to show that like everyone has that opportunity to be a leader, and leading by example is probably some of the best way you can stand out. So cool. Now I'm gonna get all emotional.
Brian's gets emotional. You know, we can close it with this. As I was out running around the other day, so I pulled into Aronimink, and so we're doing some work there, and there was a few foremen there, just because it's the nature of the year, time of year, and the way the job's broken, what we're doing. And Cody and Andrew are working on putting this running, and there's a lot of crossings, and they're trying to make it through. And Cody's sort of figuring out what we're going to do and running numbers, and Andrew's sitting there and he's got he's excavating with air. He's doing a soft dig around these utilities, and there's laborers there, there's pipe guys there, but it's because it didn't matter who was in charge. We're just trying to get done, and they're trying to work together, and everybody steps up and takes a piece and says, I'm going to do this piece, and that's the piece they do, and it is really something that makes me proud when I show up to a job, that everybody's willing to do whatever it takes to just get the job done and help the rest of the team to keep it going forward.
Yeah, it is fun to see, for sure. Well, that's probably a good place to wrap it up. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, and thanks for joining us. We'll catch you again on another episode.